No, this is great. Thank you, everybody, for coming in from the sunny outdoors into this gallery. I really appreciate you being here today. I'm Brandon Ranches, Senior Curator here at the Missoula Art Museum. I was going to do a brief introduction and then let the conversation take place. It's really a conversation we've been looking forward to ever since the gallery got installed in February, so we've been waiting for this for several months now. You're here in the Linda M. Frost Gallery, which is dedicated to showing contemporary Native art. And you're in Jason Clark's exhibition, in case you didn't know why you're here, this exhibition, Free Land, which examines the Dawes, allotment, and homestead acts and their impacts on land and animals and people. It's through the MAM collection and this gallery that MAM demonstrates our commitment to representing contemporary Indigenous artistic expression faithfully and collaboratively. We recognize the ongoing sovereignty of the Salish and Kalispah tribal people who agreed through treaty to live in peace with settlers of this land. Tribal people continue to inspire MAM's efforts to create and maintain a beloved inclusive community, and we really respect the original sacrifice made by Indigenous people. That's our declaration of relationships that we just recrafted this past fall. With us tonight are the artist Jason Clark. He's going to be the quiet one off to your right. Printmaker extraordinaire. Jason has had an outsized impact on students as a professor, 2D and 3D tech and matrix press printer. So it's really great. We've been working on this show for 3+ years. He's been diligently, I saw a small prototype at what was then called the Gallery of Visual Arts, and we invited him to expand that concept and fill the entire gallery, which he's done wonderfully. Roy Bigcrane is next to him, whose relative Peregrine Falcon Robe was instrumental in saving the CSKT herd, the Confederated Salish Kootenai Tribes herd, which has helped establish the bison range later, and by extension the American Prairie herds. And those are stories that we'll hear in a moment. Roy is here not representing the bison range or the tribe as a whole, but rather his relative in sharing that role that his family has played in saving the bison. And I think it's just an incredible story, and that connection to American Prairie is really an important one. Corrie Williamson, poet and American Prairie Community Outreach Director, is going to serve as both a panelist, and then at a last minute we said, you're such a great moderator, would you please moderate this panel as well, and that way you don't have to have me sitting up there doing nothing. So Corrie's going to act in that dual role, able to comment on everything that's being said, but also guiding the conversation. And then Scott Heidelbrink, he's right here to my left, your left, Director of Landscape Stewardship and head of the Bison program at American Prairie. It's just an incredible group of people that we've gathered, I think, from every corner to be here tonight. And I was really hoping, like we were kind of sitting in the back, and I said, I'm sorry it's so sunny outside. It's just terrible when it's sunny. We might have 3 people, but it'll be a good conversation anyway. Tonight's talk is intended to be conversational, and we're gathered together to listen to one another and build cross-cultural understandings, to challenge our assumptions, and to celebrate cultural joy, creativity, and resilience. So please remember that we all have different life experiences, and be open to new ideas or perspectives if they come your way. Treat one another with respect and be open to missteps if they occasionally happen. I want to thank everybody for coming again. If you have a cell phone that's turned up all the way, could you turn it up a little bit more so we can hear it during the presentation? Yeah, just the opposite of that. Thank you very much, and over to Corrie. Thank you.
Well, I wasn't nervous, and then Brandon talked me up so much as a moderator, now I am. Thank you, Brandon, for inviting us. It's just a pleasure to be here, to come over from Lewistown. And Brandon didn't mention this, but in 2023, he was an artist in residence at American Prairie and came out and spent a couple of weeks out there with us and with our bison and on the landscape, and it's just been so fun to continue that relationship and to get to come back here tonight. Thank you, Roy, for being here, and Scott, and Jason, thank you so much for this exhibit. This is really, really powerful, and I have followed your work for a long time and was so excited when Brandon told me about this, and then I came in here this afternoon to kind of look around and was just overwhelmed and had an initial question I wanted to start with, and then being here this afternoon kind of changed my mind a little bit, and I'm going to start with something else. And I was really struck this afternoon by this work and how dense and diverse it is, like the prairie, and how full of echoes and ghosts it is, like the prairie. And I think some of us have a pretty good sense of how rare, frankly, prairies and grasslands are today, how endangered they are, how much they've been changed. But a lot of folks don't. A lot of folks are still discovering that, I find, in the work that American Prairie does. And looking around at Jason's artwork, I recognize that loss is really at the heart of that. And loss is at the heart of what we do at American Prairie too. And so is hope and action, and we're gonna talk about that too. And loss is at the heart of the work that anybody does with bison in the world today. So I wanted to ask the panelists to think a little bit about and to share, what is the prairie lost? In their worlds, what do they want you to know about what's missing or what's lost from these ecosystems and these landscapes? Scott, do you want to start?
Even though I know her, she did not give me the questions before, so. What is lost? That's the question, right? What is the prairie lost? Honestly, my answer is going to be very short, and it's we don't know, because a lot of those interactions, animals, and how that all worked together disappeared before anybody was documenting it, whether that's bison or beavers or any other species out on the prairie. It all happened so fast in such a short amount of time that I don't think we know what we lost. We all know there's a million pieces and a million interactions, and I think we've lost a lot of them. And that's kind of what I love to do, is see those things start to return back to the landscape.
Well, I don't live on the prairie, so I'm gonna have to fake it. Well, we know that bison are pretty much gone from the prairie, and how they interacted with the land. How a lot of places where the bison were, the lands were good. The buffalo wallows, the stream banks weren't destroyed by buffalo. They lived with the land because that's all they know. That's all they know. All these animals in nature were here before us human beings got here. And the Creator told them to make room for the human beings that are coming. And the Creator told them that they're going to help the humans that are coming. And so they did. They helped us. We learned so much from them. We learned how to, all of the things of nature, this natural world, live by one law. That's the Creator's law. As human beings, we're the ones that deviate from that law, the natural law. And so we learn from them how best to walk on this earth, to always remember to give homage, thanks, ask for help to the Creator, because all of the natural world knows how to live, and that's what the Creator right there in front of them. So we were lucky to be able to know these things, because when we were put here on this world, on this side of the world, anyways, we were told how to be on this earth, on this land, how to conduct ourselves, and that's what we did. And not just the bison, that alone, the wolves that used to run the land, all of the gopher towns and prairie dogs, all of these things, all these animals that disappeared. The eagle almost disappeared. And maybe there's not as many eagles as there used to be roaming the land, guardian of the land, protector of the native people. And that's just some of the things we could talk so much about. I think one of the big things that has been lost is how many people don't appreciate the prairies or the mountains. I mean, really appreciate it. Give that thanks for that food that the land gives us. The water, the medicines, things we use in our ceremonial life. To be able to enjoy the winds, feel that heat, that cold, and know that's all a part of the Creator's blessings, that we can live that way, live with it. We suffer sometimes, but as long as we remember to give that thanks to the Creator, to the animals, that we will keep going, not just for ourselves, but for the children coming up. Maybe the children are the ones who recognize the beauty of the prairie, because they appreciate everything. They appreciate the smallest things that we might overlook sometime. So maybe some of the biggest losses of the prairie is not enough people given that appreciation to enjoy the beauty. It might look ugly sometimes to some people, seeing the badlands or just scrub grass or sagebrush, and think how ugly, but to people who appreciate it, it's beautiful. There's something there that's good for the spirit, something there that'll help us. So that's kind of one thing I think about.
Jason?
When I was making this body of work, I think what I was thinking about was kind of what Roy was talking about. The loss of a complete ecosystem that did not need to be managed, that thrived and flourished on its own without any of us or science or anything like that coming into play. It was a living organism. And we've lost that. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I think maybe that's a good step towards talking about then the idea of restoration, which is the title of this event tonight, and in your statement on this exhibit, Jason, you talk about the possibility of restoration. And I think that's a word we use all the time in our work. It's a helpful word, it's a useful word. From a kind of scientific and ecological perspective, we often talk about restoration as like restoring the functionality of an ecosystem. And that's certainly part of it. And also when I spend time with friends and partners in places like the Ani Nakota community at Fort Belknap, I hear restoration used, and I hear a lot of shared goals and shared values, but I also hear different words, and I hear words like balance, and restoring a balance, and the return to systems of interconnectivity and reciprocity, and I hear the connection of restoration also to culture. And I have a friend in that community who has told me many times that the Ani have, for example, a swift fox ceremony. And he says, well, how can you have swift fox ceremony if you don't have any swift fox? And Fort Belknap has restored swift fox to the prairie there and to their lands there, and that's powerful, and that's a possibility, I think, to me. So I want to ask you all, when you think about what's possible and when you think about the hope of restoration, what do you see happening? What do you want to see happening? What does that mean to you? Who wants to start? Make Jason start?
Jason does.
Cool.
Reverse order.
Thank you. Restoration. Yeah, I'm thinking.
Yeah, I just didn't want you to drop the mic.
The thing that I think about is the land and the indigenous people cannot be separated. Without the people, there is no land, and without the land, there is no people. And there needs to be a restoration of that relationship, not as a token, not as lip service. It needs to be a complete restoration. Yeah.
Can you say that again?
You can just pass it
What
down.
are
if
you,
you want.
when you think about restoration, whether that's bison or ecosystems or cultural restoration, what are you thinking about, Roy, and what are you hopeful for?
What I think about restoration is that nature can get along without us, and it's the human beings that are interfering in the natural flow of life. A lot of it may be for money, but I think if we can be less intrusive on nature, a lot of things will come back. And I think you see some things coming back slowly, and it's because of people who do want to make a difference. They see the danger the world is in. 50 million plus bison roaming the land at one time, getting down to maybe a couple of hundred. Now there's more, but grizzly bears, eagle, so many things that have disappeared. They all have a role in this life. They do in God's work. Creator told them how to be, and that's what they do. Again, it's us human beings who deviate from the natural laws. And our people learn from the natural world. We learned, we believed, and we still do. We still believe in those things. So what we do with the natural world, we try to help keep the balance or bring balance back. And the good thing is that more people are waking up to helping out and knowing that things are out of balance, the natural world. And these things our people knew was going to happen way long time ago, even before maybe Columbus came to this area, to this land. We were told how things were going to be, what was going to happen. But we didn't give up. We continued to do our ceremonies. We continued to ask the animals for help. The animals would relay messages to the Creator. The Creator would relay messages back to the animals, the natural world, and then they would tell us how to be, what to do. So I think to restore the land is to help the human beings to restore themselves to live in the most natural way. I mean, natural doesn't mean not driving cars or playing with computers or whatever, but paying homage to the land, to the Creator. I remember this old man said that God is nature and nature is God. So if we help restore the natural world, the land, it should help us human beings to restore our family lives, community lives, and so on.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think for me, the prairie has an essence to it, and it's all over the place. It means a lot of things. It's the quietest place in the world. It can also be the noisiest place in the world. It can be extremely calm, and it can be extremely anxiety-ridden. It can downpour, and it can be a drought. It's contradicting of itself a lot, and that to me is this essence that a true wild prairie ecosystem has. And I'm going to use an example from our bison manager, Pedro. He describes his job as returning dignity to the bison. And I think that's a good way to talk about restoration through my lens, because we have exerted this control over something to make it something that it is not. Whether that's tilling of the land, whether that's putting bison behind a fence, there's something about these changes that takes away a piece. Every little change we make takes away a piece, and it loses its essence, it loses its dignity, and it's not what it once was. And so when I think about restoration, I look at it through the lens of returning that essence, returning that dignity to whatever we're talking about, whether that's a beaver, a minnow, a bee, or a bison. It's removing those barriers that make them something they're not.
We should probably talk more about buffalo, huh? That is something that connects us all up here, and I would love to just hear each of you share a little bit about your connection to buffalo. And I think it's hard to get away from buffalo as symbolic and the engineers of that ecosystem out there on the prairie, and that there's thousands upon thousands of years of co-evolution between that landscape and that animal. And we came so close to losing them, and now we have the great honor of working with them. I know that Roy has some really really interesting connections to buffalo as well. So I'd just love to hear from everybody. What do these animals mean to you? What is your connection to bison? Roy, do you want to start this one?
Well, our people relied upon the bison for many things, and I know most of you know kind of the history of Native people and bison. What it meant shelter, food, medicine, lodging. They told us how to be. And my family, like many families, not just our reservation, but through all of this land, through all of this world here, they all have stories of such things. How the bison saved us, kept us from starving. When people were having difficulties, sickness, whatever, they prayed, did ceremonies, and depending upon the person conducting the ceremony or even the person praying, the bison would come and tell them something. And the bison on the bison range that we have, some of those bison came from my great-grandfather who was out on the plains and brought back some calves, maybe the late 1800s sometime. He brought back some calves, and he had a herd. They say about 4, 5, 6 calves maybe. Started this herd by Moise, where his homestead was, and that's where the bison range is now, right by his homestead where he had raised bison. And then when he was gone one time, gone out visiting or doing whatever, his stepfather sold him bison that he had, which they say numbered about 20 or so by then. And these two people who bought the bison from my great-grandfather's stepfather, they're the ones who, the herd got big up to a couple of thousand then. But to go back even farther, my great-great-grandfather, his name was Atatice, Peregrine Falcon Robe. And I guess the people are out on the plains, the prairie, hunting, getting their meat. Our people used to be over that side also. Be over there, come back over this way. And there wasn't just one big band of people going over. There was always small, different bands of Salish people, Kalispel people, Kootenai people. We had different bands all over, down in the Bitterroot, up around the lake, over in the Helena area. But we would band up and go on at the plains for protection, have a bigger group of people. And so my great-grandfather was out on the camp was out on the plains, and he was coming back. The camp was coming back this way. They made meat and were coming back. And they got to other side of the pass someplace. And there was a herd of bison following them. And they made camp on the pass, other side, and Atatice goes to the chief's teepee who are in there smoking, and he says, these bison want to come back with us to this side of the mountains. What should we do? Because Atatice, he had a relationship with the bison. He had a relationship with the Peregrine Falcon. That's why he got his name, Peregrine Falcon's Robe. But some people are such a person that they have relationships with other parts of nature. I mean, a deep relationship where they call upon these aspects of nature to come and help, ask them for help, ask them how to be in this world. And so the natural world talks to people, and some people more so. So he goes to the chief's teepee and said, these bison want to come with us. What should we do? The chiefs couldn't decide after a couple of days, because some people said, yes, it's good that they come with us, and some said, no, if we bring them over here, then we won't do nothing. We'll just, because they were used to being out on the plains. Oh, because we have people buried over there, babies were made over there. We knew that land, we knew where the medicines are. Old camping spots, we knew everything about the land. So it wasn't just like we visited the land, it was part of our way of life to be over there too. So the chiefs couldn't decide, and they told them, well, we can't decide. So Atatice says, okay. He goes back to the bison and tells them, you have to stay out here. So the bison all turned around and went back onto the plains, and that was that. And another story is that one time the people were out on the plains, winter time. You know, the winters on the prairies are bad, man. They're tough. Maybe nowadays it's not as tough as it used to be, but I just can only imagine. It's I know it's like nowadays I think it's tough, but these guys, we'd be jumping in creeks in the middle of winter. That's how tough our people were. They could go days without food. Eat just a little bit, they eat a 3-course meal with dessert. Take a drink of water. And I remember reading this book, I don't know if it's true or not, but this Crow chief was helping the armies do some scouting back in the day, chasing the Lakota people. They'd be chasing after the Lakota, and well, it'd be noontime, they'd come to a screeching halt. The soldiers all have their lunch, and the Crow scouts just kind of got angry. Jeez, we're so close to catching these people. And that Crow guy says, he says, Indian eats when he's hungry and drinks when he's thirsty. Not just because it's 12 o'clock, 5 o'clock or whatever, 8 o'clock in the morning. So that's how our people were, so our people were out on the plains, and it was one of those ferocious storms out there where the snow out there turned to ice. They couldn't, get away from camp very much to hunt. And he said that the animals all disappeared too. They were all hunkered down someplace. Couldn't find any buffalo, couldn't find any deer, or maybe the elk was almost gone then too from the plains, but they had a hard time. And so the people were going hungry. And then a few days, I guess only the children were eating, and they were only eating once a day because the food was getting scarce. And then there was a medicine man who he was putting on a ceremony to call in a Chinook, because some people have that gift where they can call in, make the weather change. If it's call in a Chinook or a rain or a fog or whatever, if they're that way, that's how it'll be. And so he's calling in, trying to call in the Chinook. There's a ceremony going on. Atatice and his friends hear about it, and Atatice says, let's go and help out. They go to that lodge, that teepee, and that medicine man who's conducting it starts raising hell with Atatice, teasing him, saying not good things to him. So Atatice says, tells his friends, let's go. So they leave, and I guess there was maybe a few drops of rain that started to come down. The weather started to change, but that medicine man said, I quit. I'm too mean, I'm getting old, I'm getting too mean. I shouldn't be talking to those young people like that. I quit, the ceremony's done. So anyways, a couple days later go by again, and Atatice is at his mom's teepee lodge, and she tells him, you gotta do something. The children are the only ones eating now. The adults aren't eating. It's only the kids who eat, and pretty soon we'll be out of food. You gotta do something. So he says, okay. So he gets some of his friends together, and they put on a ceremony. And so they're starting to do the ceremony. And then other people in the camp hear what's going on, singing going on, and things like that. And it's, like I said, it's cold. Snow's like ice out there. And so other people come, and inside the teepee gets filled up, so they kind of roll up the sides of the teepee, so the people on the outside can be in there and kind of dance around and do what they're doing. And Atatice is calling for his helpers to do something for the well-being of the people, to help the people out. So Atatice is doing the ceremony, and then he gets told by the spirit, by his helpers or whatever it is, they come and they tell him what's going to happen, and he tells the people. He says, in the morning, the kids will be throwing snowballs at each other. 9 bison will come into camp. You can shoot them, you can kill them. Your people will be saved. And then a ways out, there'll be a big herd. You can kill as much as you need, but kill extra because the people over here are hungry too, because it was a hard winter over here too, where animals disappeared. It was hard to find anything to eat because all the food they saved up was disappearing. So in the morning, that's exactly what happened is that kids were throwing, a Chinook came in, kids were throwing snowballs at each other. 9 bison came into camp, and he was able to kill them and feed their bellies. And then they found a big herd outside the camp a ways and kill as much as they needed and kill extra to bring back over here, because when they come back over here, the people were happy to see them because they said that they were hungry too because the animals disappeared on them. So that's how the story of my ancestors, or ancestors, that my DNA, my bloodline, a lot of our people's DNA and bloodline. Not just one story, I'm sure there's many other stories of our people and other tribal people who have such stories of our relationship to the bison. Because it's not just food, it's how to be in this world. Because maybe think God will come talk to a person directly. This entity that's bigger than all things, bigger than the universe, bigger than the galaxies, all this great, so sacred, so holy. There can't even be a word to the immenseness of the holiest of holies. But this natural world will speak for this entity, this spirit, the sun, the stars, the rocks, whatever. And say, the Creator heard you and sent me to you to tell you what to do, how to be. And you want to honor the Creator, this is what you can do. Sing this song. Paint your face this way. And so on, so it's that's our people. It's not a fairy tale, it's reality. And things are happening still right now that most people don't know about our relationship. We still have that relationship. Maybe it's not as strong as it used to be because we kind of got corrupted a little bit. We got forced into boarding schools, public schools, language taken away, ceremonies taken away, but we're still here. We're still so happy to see the bison making inroads again. And it's not just us helping that to happen, but people from all over. So that's my story, bison. I'm blessed to be able to know some of that story, to know some of that relationship. That's not just a story, but it's also personal. Because they're a part of my DNA. So that's what I got to say about that.
I remember the first time I saw a bison. I was maybe 7 or 8 years old, and it was outside of Cody, Wyoming. And I remember, you know that feeling that you get when you haven't seen a friend of yours or something like that for a really, really long time, and you see them and your heart like jumps. That's exactly what happened with me. And every time since then, and I see bison all the time, I mean, they're everywhere, but every time I see a bison, I get that same feeling, every single time. For me, bison are hope. It's that story of there were only a few hundred, and we can see them now. We can see them all the time now. And so it's that hope of maybe it is possible to restore this. And so, yeah, that's what it is for me.
Yeah, my connection goes back to when I was 10, and my mom, dad, and sister and I were driving across South Dakota to go fishing. And I remember seeing bison out the window going down the interstate, got really excited, and I was like, did you guys see those bison? And everyone was like, what are you talking about? You're making that up. And they still tease me about it today, that I actually did not see bison. Yeah, but I did. And you know, that's my earliest memory of bison. And then, you know, I ended up going to school for wildlife and fisheries, no talk of bison, no thought of bison. Did tallgrass prairie restoration, no thought of bison, no talk of bison. And then found my way to American Prairie, and I was just the fence guy. And, you know, dealt with bison every day, worked on fence every day, was out there, and never really, until maybe 5 years ago, it all came around to like how important of a piece this thing is. And so my connection is really through like restoration and conservation of the species now. And I told Corrie to set me up to get on my soapbox. And so, thank you. And when I look at bison today, I have a deep connection to them now. I've helped manage them, I've helped restore herds, I've helped do some really amazing things with a lot of really amazing people. And while we've made like great strides in returning that connection, there's a lot more to that, and there's a lot, we're still a long ways from fully returning that connection of letting bison, being bison on the landscape. The baseline has shifted so far to bison behind fences, bison on small landscapes, bison just being allowed in certain jurisdictions, that we have this animal. Yes, it's not going anywhere, but it still does not have its essence. It is still not a bison. A bison does not stand behind a fence, just like an elk doesn't stand behind a fence, just like a pronghorn doesn't stand behind a fence. They are wild. And so for me, that connection goes back to restoring that essence of that animal and really trying to move the species forward to be what they once were.
Yeah, isn't it the only wild animal that can't be wild?
Yes. In North America, yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to answer this question too, and I don't usually wear my American Prairie hat and my poet hat at the same time, but Brendan outed me. So I'm going to read a poem, not one of my own poems, though I wish I had written this one. But I'm going to read this poem, and then I think we'll take a couple of questions from the audience for all of us, and then we'll break and folks can come up and visit with us a little bit individually. This is a poem by Steve Scafidi, and it's called For the Last American Buffalo. Because words dazzle in the dizzy light of things, and the soul is like an animal, hunted and slow, this buffalo walks through me every night, as if I was some kind of prairie, and hunkers against the cold dark, snorting under the stars while the fog of its breathing rises in the air. And it is the loneliest feeling I know, to approach it slowly with my hand outstretched, to tenderly touch the heavy skull, furred and rough, and stroke that place huge between its ears, where what I think and what it thinks are one singing thing, so quiet that when I wake, I seldom remember walking beside it and whispering in its ear, quietly passing the miles, the two of us, as if Cheyenne or the lights of San Francisco were our unlikely destination. And sometimes trains pass us, and no one leans out hard in the dark, aiming to end us. And so we continue on somehow. And today, while the seismic quietness of the earth spun beneath my feet, and while the world, I guess, carried on, that lumbering thing moved heavy, thick, and dark through the dreams I believe we keep having, whether we sleep or not. And when you see it again, say, I'm sorry for things you didn't do. And then offer it some sweetgrass. And tell it stories you remember from the star chamber of the womb, or at least the latest joke, something good to keep it company. As otherwise it doesn't know you are here for love. And like the world tonight, doesn't really care whether we live or die. Tell it you do and why. Is there anybody that has a question that they want to ask of anybody up here? Panelists, do you have questions for each other?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Does AUM apply to American Prairie like it does cattle?
Yes.
And then what is your AUM?
AUM, for those who don't know, is Animal Unit Month. It's based on what a cow-calf pair graze per month. Are you asking what, like how they compare? Like, is it like 1-to-1?
Well, no, I'm assuming that they probably don't compare. There's some kind of ratio there, but I'm just wondering, like, what do you guys, in terms of restoration, what's your AUM for buffalo?
Right, so any federal or state lease, they have an AUM rate
Right.
set for that
Right.
allotment. So and cattle and bison are considered equivalent as far as the amount of forage.
The government.
Yes,
Yeah.
not gonna get into that.
I know. I wanted to clarify that. I understand, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, we work, with each property, do forage assessments, and
Right.
on the deeded land, we can change that stocking rate based on what we're
Well,
seeing
that's what
out
I'm
there.
asking on deeded ground, because I know that you have public ground, deeded ground stuff going on, but what's your deeded ground AUM?
Everyone's different. Like,
Depends on where they are.
Exactly,
Yeah, okay.
depends on the year, depends on which
Yeah.
property.
Yeah, do you have kind of an average, is it more or less? I'm assuming it's less than the governmental AUM.
Yes and no.
Okay.
It's a complicated
Okay,
equation,
okay.
I guess,
All right,
yeah.
sorry about that.
No.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
Hi, what's the lineage of the bison that are at the American Prairie Reserve? Did I get that right? American Prairie Reserve?
Yep. The question was, what is the lineage of bison at American Prairie? And so we've made an effort to source bison from different herds. Initial imports were from Wind Cave National Park in South Dakota. Then we had subsequent imports from Elk Island National Park in Canada, which are descendants of the bison Roy was talking about here in Montana. And then recently we've started adding some bison from Colorado State University and from our neighbors at Fort Belknap that are of Yellowstone lineage.
Yeah, in the back. Uh-huh.
Could you please speak to the work American Prairie is partnering on with different tribes in our region or across, particularly with bison?
Yeah, I'll let Scott do that.
Yeah, so we have surplus bison every year. We have, as described here, a certain amount of forage on the landscape, and so we have a certain amount of bison we can have. So every year we have to distribute bison to other places. A lot of those are tribal herds. I don't even maybe 9 tribes across the US now, I think is the number. In Montana, we've worked with, through the Intertribal Buffalo Council, we've worked with Rocky Boy, we've worked with Fort Peck, Fort Belknap, and Blackfeet. So yeah, it's, yeah, our bison are kind of spread all over the country now.
Yeah, let's maybe do just 1 or 2 more, and then, you know, folks can come and visit with us afterwards too. Yes?
I have a question for Jason, who I can't see.
Yes.
I am so moved by what you've done here.
Thank you.
And I really, it's just so deeply moving to just be sitting here. And I had so much fun going through and realizing each one of these has a title.
Yes.
Which in itself is its own story. And everybody should just be able to look at the book for a second and see that each one of these, you have a sentence or a phrase.
Yes.
About it. I'm just wondering, how did this all come about for you inside?
Yeah. During COVID, I was reading books about bison restoration that I found at Goodwill. And had always been interested in it and just happened across a couple books. And so I started reading about that, and then I wanted to do something about a body of work about bison restoration. And so I started making bison prints and stuff like that, and I was going along fine and stuff. And then I was thinking, well, maybe I should expand it and start thinking about the history of the landscape. And so I wanted to do 160 prints that number 160.
After the acres?
Yes, it references the acres in the Homestead Act and when the reservations were allotted. The 160 is about that allotment that the government gave the indigenous population when they took away the rest of the land. Yeah, exactly. Don't get me started. And so that was the impetus of it, is doing 160 prints, dealing with prairie restoration, not just bison, but all of prairie restoration and stuff like that. And so that right there, this wall, is 160 prints. So I got that done, and then I was thinking, well, there's also the 320 acres that were given as allotment for grazing land. And so I decided to do another 160 prints, and so that's what the show is 320 prints. Yeah.
And you have many of the same, the images of
Yeah.
rebels, but there's so many different ones too. You really have to study each one. I mean, they're windmills.
Yep.
One behind you there.
Yeah, windmills and Thunderbirds and stuff like that. Yeah.
I know, and here's the trees, like a
Petroglyphs. Yeah.
Anyway, I'm just very, very moved by this exhibit. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Is there one more question? It sounded like Brandon was giving me the signal.
Susan, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to hear about the prairie, the land, how much land do the bison roam on now? I mean, how much space do they have?
At American Prairie?
Yeah.
Scott, you're a popular man tonight.
Right now, so we have hoops on the ground on about 45,000 acres. We've been approved by the BLM and state to graze another roughly about 40,000 that do not have bison on them yet. And so that's in future plans.
How many bison do you have?
We have 850 bison in 2 herds.
Spring calves on the way.
How do you get your land?
Purchase, willing buyer, willing seller.
Sure.
All right, we're a bit. Oh, is there another one?
I think, yeah, let's do one more question, then we'll break up, and please come visit with us. We won't go anywhere,
Yeah.
but I know some people probably want to move on with their evenings, but go ahead.
It's a question for the whole panel. but lessons learned about returning bison to the landscape, either ecologically or culturally.
Can you repeat the question for the audience?
Yeah, lessons learned from bison as they return to the landscape.
Ecologically and culturally.
Does anyone have an immediate answer?
I don't know enough about it to make an informed comment, but I do know that bison are a keystone species, and so in order to restore the ecosystem, there have to be bison there.
Yeah, and for me, it's honestly a lesson in patience. Bison are bison, and they're always going to be bison, and you can't make them something they're not. You have to work with their tendencies and within the framework that the mindset that they're in, and they will mirror exactly what you do. So if you get angry, if you start pushing too hard, they're going to do the same thing. And so it's a very, yeah, if you stay calm, they stay calm. They're very responsive to what you are doing on the landscape as well.
You know, my job at American Prairie is community relations, and so I think the lessons that I'm always learning is that there are people like the folks up here who have that reaction that Jason had when they see bison that I have, right, which is that they're something very old and true and important that's happening in the relationship between bison and the land and bison and people. But not everybody has that reaction. And we forget about this, but bison are, I would say, the most controversial species in Montana today. And yeah, and we just have to figure out how to shift those baselines back, and we have to figure out how to do it together. And we have to figure out how, yeah, to return that dignity, because it is hard. It's going to take a long, long time to see, I think, what we all dream of seeing.
Doesn't American Prairie have a 100-year vision? I've heard rumors of that.
Yeah, I mean, or longer, you know, like we
don't have a 100-year strategic plan. That sounds nice. But we talk about, you know, we talk about the prairie as so much older than we are, and we look back hundreds of years, and we look forward hundreds of years. You know, and I think, you know, a lot of folks who I speak with in Indigenous communities talk about those 7 generations, and how did the people 7 generations before you prepare the world for you, and how will we prepare the world for the folks who come after us. And I think that you have to think that way when the work is big and hard, and you have to think that way when the work is at the level of landscapes. Roy, do you want to answer that one? You can have the last word.
Well, that bison, they have the knowledge. It goes back, it's like our knowledge as human beings. We learn a lot of things from our parents, grandparents, and things that they learn from their parents, their grandparents, and so on. And the bison, they have that knowledge, earth knowledge, creator's knowledge, that they're willing to share with us human beings and our people, because of the way we are, the things we do. They know us, and they help us with that knowledge. That goes back to earth knowledge, millions of years old. Because as human beings, we're pitiful people. this earth would survive without humans, but we can't survive without the animals. And so as humans, if we're such a people that we know we need help to make good footsteps on this earth, not just for ourselves, but for the future generations. And we know that the ancestors helped pave this way for us to be here, so we don't forget them either. And so these animals, this natural world, they know their role in life, and they know that the Creator told them to help us human beings out, and they do that still. 2025, they're still communicating with us in a high spiritual way. We do our ceremonies with the bison as a part of it, and they come, their spirit comes in. No matter if it's the eagle or the rock or the water spirit or the stars, we call upon them and they will come. Because they know us. They know we haven't given up. We haven't turned our back on the Creator or the natural world. We're still holding on. And we're trying to keep things in the best way possible with respect to the animals, to the land, and hopefully to each other. And so they know we're going through a difficult time. 1 minute before midnight, 30 seconds, whatever we're coming down to, we're almost there. What are we going to do? Count our money? But the natural world is going to help us. Because they know we haven't given up. All of us haven't given up. Some of us believe, holding true to what we were taught, how to be in this world. And they help us. It's a beautiful world. It's a beautiful way of life to appreciate these simple things. Getting up, feeling that sun on you in the morning, looking at the dew on the ground, feeling that cold winter wind. Even the northern plains winter winds. My little curly eyebrows. But we have to appreciate these things so the nature can continue to look at us and say, these human beings, they haven't forgotten the Creator's rules, the Creator's laws, the natural laws. They still honor creation. We will help them as much as we can. Even when things look bad, we'll help them as much as we can. So that's what I think, and that's what we know. That's what we believe. It'll help us through this difficult time we're going through, this breakup of families and so on. All right. Next.
That seems like a good place to stop. Thanks everybody so much. Please come chat with us afterwards.